Look, fair warning, even my opening joke's going to be considered a spoiler. Okay, here we go. You know what you need to do when you want to deal with the undead? You call them the ladies. It was actually just a fun coincidence that I was already wearing this shirt when I watched this thing. Hey everybody! It's Game of Thrones, 3rd episode of the last season. This puts us at the halfway mark now, having finished this. And, yeah, that was the thing. So, this is the big battle that was promised. Wow. I was going to say by the previous episode. I would actually say that's been promised by most of the show for up to this point. And again, I already gave you a spoiler warning. The Night King is dead. A bunch of here's the thing. I was going to say a bunch of named characters, most of whom, like, I know on sight, but whose names I actually cannot readily remember, have died. Theon's dead. I know his name. But we got a whole bunch of deaths, whole bunch of mayhem. I have slightly mixed feelings about the episode. Basically, HBO did not throw as much money at this as they should have for the scale of it. I know that sounds weird for how much money HBO spends on this show, but what I mean by that is it's really well done in terms of pacing, size, scope, progress, having, the right beats as it goes along to slow it down without making it seem like everything's going to be okay. That is all done incredibly well. However, there were significant chunks of the actual action where I had a really hard time figuring out what the hell was going on because of A, how friggin' dark it was, which, yes, was moody and creepy in a few shots and a few instances, and sometimes visually worked out well, but other times I'm like, okay, stop cutting, slow down, and light the friggin' scene. And then, in addition, there's so much just crap in the frame oftentimes that a lot of the more effects heavy moments, they just look like garbage. And I'm like, the dragon on dragon fights were by far the least interesting thing in this episode because I couldn't tell what in the heck was going on. So, like, for comparison, you can go all the way back to the Battle of Blackwater, and there's really only one really noticeable effect shot in that, and that is the wildfire, I think that's what they call it, the green flame stuff burning the fleet. That is a big shot, it's a clear shot, it's a good shot, but it's because it's basically the only one they had to do. That's not to say that episode was cheap, it wasn't, but everything else that they had to spend money on was practical. They just had to have the extras, they had to have the armor, they had, that sort of thing. Which, if you've got it, as long as you don't shoot it like an amateur, it's going to look good. Whereas heavy effects, if you don't have the time or the money to do them right, it's not enough just to have them there. For size and scope, if you've got enough physical bodies in place, you can make it look big. But when it comes to these extra things, not so much. So I feel, and I don't think I mentioned this in my previous episode, that I went into this nervous that I was going to not be able to see a good chunk of what was going on. And while it wasn't as bad as I was afraid it was going to be, and I could at least for the most part follow the flow of the battle, if not all the specific individual action beats that were going on, it could have been better. Wasn't as bad as I thought, or at least was afraid it was going to be. So, yeah, moving on from that. I think my favorite moment in this was actually the quiet moment between Tyrion and Sansa. When they're down there and Tyrion's like, I should go up. I might spot something nobody else does. And Sansa just drags him down to earth like, we're down here because we can't help. And the best thing that we can do is stay out of the way and just face the truth of our situation. And him appreciating her for doing that. That's a great little moment. And like I said, a moment like that doesn't actually make you go, oh, I feel like everything's going to be okay. It's just a pause. It's a moment to take a breath. There are a few of those. And like it happens when they light the trenches. That holds the Army of the Dead back for a little bit so we can take a breather. Because you can't just have her at hammer on relentlessly. Because that's just numbing. If you dial it up to 11 but just leave it there, then it's the same as having it just as at 1. It's the repetition. It doesn't matter what the level is. If it just stays in one place, it numbs you. So you've got to take the dips. You've got to ebb and flow of the thing. And like I said, this thing's really well paced. Quite well done, definitely in that regard. I am left wondering about a few people, like, okay, they singled out this person dying and this person dying, and like I saw Ghost in the charge that the Dothraki did. I didn't see him come back. Did we lose another direwolf? Because I feel like more attention should have been paid if that happened. But so characters who did die. There's Eye Patch guy with the flaming sword. He's dead. Little Lady Mormont. That one hurt. I think that one probably hurt the most for me. But out like a boss. Taking down a giant. Yep, she is up there in tough as nails lady heaven, just trading badass stories with Olenna Tyrell. I can live with that. So her going down fighting like that. Okay, that still kind of hurt to see her go. Melisandre, that one was a little weird for me because like the nature of the death, like it worked and it was fitting. I feel like it was a weird note to actually end the episode on, though. I'm not entirely sure why they did that, but I mean, in and of itself, it worked totally fine. There's probably another guy whose name I can't remember. Like John's other main like night watch bro who isn't Sam. I forget his name. Like I have a way better memory for faces than I do for names, which is actually a big part of why I opted to not try and read the books, but to watch the show, because I can recognize a face and go, I know that face and I know it from here, it's that guy. But there's a decent chance I still will not remember the name. So when the idea of trying to read the book where all I have is a name and I don't have a face to put it to, yeah, that's that's intimidating. But, so yeah, he went down, and I gotta take my hat off, for this one. Liz, she not only called it that the Night King was gonna bite it in this episode, but also that Arya was gonna be the one to do it. She did also predict that Arya would die in the process of doing it, which doesn't appear to have happened. But that's 2 out of 3 on like the big climactic moments. So props to my partner. She nailed that. And that also felt good. And like it's something so simple. There were a couple of really simple like twists. Not like big, ooh, this changes everything twist, but like, oh, dang, moments. And that was one. The other one being like the bodies in the crypt. Because the thing was, like, after it started happening, part of me went, shouldn't somebody have thought of that? But at the same time, I was going, well, I didn't think of that. And so, like, oh, dang. Ah! So, like, that's the kind of twist and complication I think is really good because the show's playing fair. It didn't, like, pull this out of its butt. Unless you completely overanalyze, which some of us do, and it's not a criticism of you if you do, odds are you didn't stop and think, oh, they're in the crypt. They're surrounded by dead people that the Night King can raise. Bad idea. Because I didn't think that. So I like that. And then, Arya, she goes for him. He stops her. And like, when I got excited and then she dropped her dagger, I'm like, oh, no. But then she caught it with the other hand, came in underneath. I'm like, oh, yes. So that was nicely satisfying. There was something that I predicted that never happened, and I feel like it was a missed opportunity. I feel like it would have been a really phenomenal, creepy, unsettling image. I'm surprised we never got an undead Hodor. Like, I feel like in general, we didn't really get much in the way of undead characters we'd seen before. I mean, granted, it could feasibly be a little bit tricky to do, seeing as there aren't, like, you're either one of the White Walkers or you're just one of the undead masses. Like, there's no sergeants on the field. It's just throwing bodies at the enemy until they get overwhelmed. So, I don't know, maybe it would have been too cheesy, but I feel like somebody, we should have seen somebody, and for me, Hodor was the obvious one to go with. I suppose the giant we could count, and I guess the dragon if you wanted to, but like, those are slightly inhuman characters, though. So I feel like there should have been someone like, oh, I remember that guy, but they never did. So, and it was funny, once Liz made the prediction to me that she thought the Night King was going to die this episode, I remember thinking, going, yeah, you're probably right. Because there's only 6 episodes this season. If they don't succeed in killing him this episode, they're going to have to try again, presumably in the actual last episode. But that comes so quickly on the heels of the previous failed attempt that it feels repetitive and redundant. It makes way more sense for them to kill him here, and then we deal with Cersei for the last half of the last season. Which looks like that's going to be what they do. Which is both smart, but also going to be tricky. It is smart because the thing about the Night King is there's no emotional investment in him as a villain. He's scary, or at least his army is certainly scary, and in the whole, like, it's like a flood of dead people. But, you know, there's no real emotional investment in him. He's not a character. He's a force of nature. So you can't have the emotional payoff and catharsis in defeating him. You can with Cersei. I think they're going to have a hard time coming anywhere close to the spectacle in terms of taking on Cersei. I would kind of presume that at this point this was most of their budget, so that they're probably not going to try for that anyways, but who knows? So, I mean, we'll see how it pays off, but certainly in terms of paying off the emotional investment, which ultimately does matter more than the spectacle. I mean, at the end of the day, at least I think it does. This was the right call. And so, yeah, overall I liked it. I've got nitpicks. It was too dark. Some of the effects, you know, you know what it reminded me of? It reminded me of that first, like, that jailbreak scene in The Crimes of Grindelwald, Fantastic Beasts 2, because I hated that scene because it took place on a flying carriage at night in a storm, in the rain. I'm like, I can't tell what's going on, and I have to wonder, did you think this was moody, or did you add all this crap on here to hide the fact that the effects don't look good? And I have to wonder if a little bit of the same thing was going on here. But aside from that, overall plotting of the thing, nicely done. Game of Thrones! Whew, that was a biggie. What are your thoughts on this episode? Whatever they are, drop something down in the comments. Let's talk about it. Bunch of stuff to do. Buttons, links, Patreon, merch, blah, 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 blah. Click on the stuff down in the description. It'll take you places and give you the opportunity to do things. But you also don't have to. Because at the end of the day, you're the council, I'm just running the meetings. And until next time, this council is adjourned.